I remember my dad back then, he asked me, are you serious about this? I'm like, I'm fully in. What do I need to do to push that needle? That's when I realized that I want to go to France.
Life's too short to drink bad beer. So I started brewing my own. I got on the radar. I sold a lot of beer. It didn't go bankrupt, but I couldn't sell my beer. That's when I decided, now I'm actually going to go to Angola.
Once you've eaten a croissant every single day and all those stuff, then reality sets in. Where's my people? My friends, my family.
All the failures prepare you for the successes. You never fail, you're never also going to be truly successful.
We are capable of overcoming everything.
I used to spend a lot of time with my kids. I always thought education wasn't just the school's problem. So that's when I started to say, look, we're going to change the system and not the kids.
As I was running, I just broke out into tears. And that's where it hit me. This is the end. I'm a former Bulls rugby player. I was conditioned to break down walls. Bring the walls, I will break them down.
As Coach G said, in the end, it's about impact. I fell in love with creating impact, profit for purpose.
Good morning and welcome to Winning the Away Game podcast, where Flip van der Merwe and I try and expose and have honest conversations with South African expats abroad and some legendary rugby players. Today we have some special guests for you and I'm, as usually, very excited. Flip, how are you feeling today?
We have wonderful guests from all over the world. A man bigger than his own personality, big guy, used to anchor the South African scrum, fellow Shimla, fellow Cheetah, fellow Blue Bulls, and fellow Springbok. Coach G himself, Gurthro Steenkamp, is joining us.
Welcome, Coach G.
Thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to this conversation. Flip, good to see you. Looking young as always, man. You're definitely on my wall of inspiration, man, after that Ironman that you did, so well done on that.
Yeah, you are the original inspiration in keeping us fit and keeping us accountable. We have to train the old bodies, don't we?
Joining us with Coach G is an amazing inspiration. Tim started in South Africa in Johannesburg with an amazing origin story, then went to Angola and conquered much of Africa before settling in Portugal, and at the ripe old age decided to reinvent himself and design and build the most amazing educational story, which we'll hear all about today. So welcome, Tim. Very excited to have you and looking forward to learning from you.
Yeah, geez, I'm super excited. I've got two Springboks here. One that I would have been right next to him there as a known hooker that I was. Not, and then, one pushing from behind. Imagine what I could have achieved. Incredible stuff, eh?
Awesome. So we always like to start with asking the same question. And this first question is really just understanding your favorite Springbok memory. So looking back over the last 30, 40 years and everything that's happened in Springbok rugby, when you look back over that time, what do you see as the most fondest memory that you can look back on? Tim?
Yeah, well, for me, it's got to be 95, because it really was a game changer. I remember watching the game and then afterward just getting in the car and just driving to Ellis Park, not knowing why, and then getting stuck there and just loving it. And, the hope that came from that, the colors on the road, everybody was happy. There was real hope, and then the images we saw and just believing that there was this miracle, that we beat Joe Lomo, we won it, and it was just amazing. So that one definitely, it's like, it sticks out right away because we've been isolated for so long. So we needed to get back in and we got in the best way possible. It was just amazing, so yeah, that's my memory there.
How old were you at the time?
So I was about 18, if I played for the Boks, maybe it would have been running on for them. But, I'll leave that to the other guys. So for me, that was, me as a Springbok. That was me, I've got the jersey. I was actually going to do it with the jersey behind me and all that, but I got held up, didn't make it back to the office. But, it was just special. I watched it with my parents. I watched it with my best friend. Just amazing. 18 years old, but I drank like a proper 27-year-old that night.
Wow, there's so many. I think, as a youngster, definitely 95 is definitely up there. That was the time I realized that actually I wanted to become a Springbok. That's when I decided that this is what I want, even though I was in a household filled with the All Black supporters back then, due to, what happened in the past in South Africa and what my parents went through. And that is something that I wanted to chase. And, that was a pivotal moment, seeing Mandela there with, with Francois Pienaar and with wearing the number 6 jersey. That was iconic. But as a player, I think one of my favorite moments is probably winning the All Blacks against in Dunedin in the House of Pain. Nobody thought we would win that one. And, it was just exceptional at the end of the day with that try with Ricky January. I still remember I had blood running down my face and had the biggest smile ever. But there's so many. It's difficult to pinpoint that. I can talk about recent ones as well. But I think at the end of the day, it's what the Springbok stands for and what it represents and the energy it gives us, the freaking goosebumps it gives us. And even today, as a former player watching the Boks play, it's unbelievable.
That's such amazing.
Brilliant memories, Gurthro, and you yourself made some brilliant Springbok memories. Take us through. So you're born in Paarl, grew up in Cape Town, and went through the Cheetahs when we first saw this Man Mountain. I was a young student, and I thought, yes, I don't want to play against that guy. Where did it start for Gurthro? Where did you start believing rugby is the thing that you excel at and what you can do?
No, obviously, I grew up in Paarl, and I'm very privileged. I had a great community, amazing people that helped me in where I lived, and obviously I was in a great school as well. I was in Paarl Boys High, and you and Gray, we had great rivalries over the years, and that banter still continues between the Paarl gym, the Gray College boys, and the Boys High boys in the Springbok team. But I do believe it's the age of 16. Obviously when I was young, I was bigger than the other guys and I would break down walls and put in big hits. When you're bigger than everyone else, it's easier. But when everyone else started to grow a bit and kind of size up as well, I think it was at the age of 16 where I realized, okay, I can actually do this. And it was something that that was when the dream turned into a vision, where I wanted it really bad. And I remember my dad back then, he asked me, are you serious about this? Isn't it just the thing you want to do and chase? Oh, how serious are you? I'm like, I'm fully in. He says, well, if you're fully in, you better get up every morning and you got to go run. And I would get up before school, would run a 3K. I didn't complain about it. It was tough sometimes doing it, but that's what I did. After training, he would come pick me up from rugby training and I had to run back home. And, accelerate forward. I mean, I don't want to take up too much time in terms of the whole biography and stuff because that's not the point of this podcast. But, we all face challenges. And I think I realized that I have something and I needed to find the right environment. And that's how I ended up in Bloemfontein. And if we have to go back, a person of color going to Bloemfontein, what the hell are you thinking? And on top of that, I ended up in an Afrikaans hostel. An Afrikaans hostel. And I won't lie to you, that was hard. That was tough. But because I was fully committed on what I wanted to achieve, and because of the lack of opportunities my families had in the past, my grandparents, my parents, I felt I had that responsibility to give it my best shot, whether I make it or not. And that stuck with me, that work ethic and, really chasing that vision, not a dream. And I always explain this. We all can have dreams, but you got to take action. And it started back then as well with the Shimlers with it. And just my condolences as well to the family of the legendary Tat Botha, was a mentor to all of us, played a massive role in our lives. And, at the Cheetahs and the Shimlers, that's why I was taught what it means to be mentally tough. Because coming from Paarl, just outside of Cape Town, I wasn't used to playing in the winter on those hard fields, those yellow fields. I'm like, my knees are hurting. Give me some Vaseline.
the paintain.
The paintain. But yeah, obviously as a youngster, played with the Cheetahs, had some amazing players there, guys like Kennedy Tsimba, fortunate enough towards the end of their careers, played with guys like Rassie and Andre Venter and Narka Drotsky and, Osterrand. And, there were some amazing players, Andrew Scholes as well, with some great people come in. I think if I look back at it, even though I'm a bull through and through, the foundation that was laid with the Cheetahs, that time when you basically have nothing. Flip he knows exactly what I'm talking about. You don't have all the fancy stuff what other unions had. We lived for our braais at captain practice. We lived for our free breakfasts at House of Coffees back then with my mates, those Saganaki breakfasts and stuff like that. But what got me through that time was pure drive. I knew that I needed to go above and beyond. And the Cheetahs, that was part and parcel, and maybe that's a fault on my side because I don't give them enough credit. When I'm in this space, whether it's on podcasts, there I've learned to deal with a lot of things. And the team we had back then, it was in 2004 when we played in that final. We didn't have big names. We had great people. We had great players. And people didn't give us a chance. And I still think we were unlucky to have lost in that final in 2004. But that's where I learned you don't always need to have the greatest things in life or the best players. But if you got a team that are mates, team that believe in the same vision, that have the same drive and share a similar purpose, anything is possible. And accelerating that to going to the Bulls, that was a tough time. And people see all the accolades and people see all the success and the trophies and stuff. But there was a time I actually considered leaving the Bulls because I didn't feel a part of the team, because I was injured at that stage. Heineke Meyer felt that I wasn't good enough to play for the Springboks. I wasn't even making the Super Rugby team. I was playing in a Vodacom Cup side. So then you start to have all these questions of self-doubt, and then it comes back to why am I here? What am I trying to achieve? Who am I doing this for? And that drive, it just kept that fire going. It kept that fire going. And, accelerated to the Bulls. Then I finally found a rugby family. I managed to start playing, and that's where I learned probably one of the most valuable lessons of life. You got to earn respect. You can't demand it. You got to earn it. And that's how the Bulls family worked. You have to show what you're all about, that you are there to pitch up for your brothers, that you're there to pitch up for your team. And till today, the Bulls is still one of my favorite teams. It still stays close to my heart. But I'm just going to put it out there. Bring the Bulls back. Bring back those players as coaches. All right, we're ready to go. We're ready to transform. We're ready to bring back the Bulls dynasty. But it was an unbelievable journey. I don't really like to talk about, how can I say, everything that I've achieved. I've been blessed with everything I've achieved. But it comes down to having a clear vision. It comes down to hard work. And also it comes down about who you're doing it for, which is very important. And still today, part and parcel of my vision and my drive is inspiring everyday people that have next to nothing, that anything is possible. It's easy for us that's sitting here, we're sitting in front of a computer, we're on this podcast, we have all this fancy equipment. There's people out there with nothing. And that if you do have a vision and if you manage to find yourself with the right people, the right team around you, anything is possible.
Wow. Thanks, Gurthro. Tim, you grew up in Joburg with Portuguese and Mozambique and parents, and was a fascinating journey. Started with entrepreneurship very early on in life and had some challenges and successes. Tell us more about the origin story.
Yeah, so I was also, being a porra, you're also one of the second-class guys, you know what I'm saying? So I understand, Coach G, what you're talking about, because also I couldn't go to the back of the bus. I'll get blixened by the oaks from the Afrikaans school that got on first, and so us porters, we knew our place. But it was an amazing family. We came in as immigrants. South Africa gave us opportunities. We worked hard. The Portuguese, the Italians, the Greeks, the Lebanese, they got in there. They took risks. They worked hard. They put the whole family working. I started working young, I do want to say, you're being very kind saying I was from Joburg, but I was actually from the East Rand. And the East Rand is a lot tougher than Joburg, I promise you. So, and also I must say that I did go to a school that was actually quite amazing, because we don't have a losing record against either Paul Boys Paul Gymnasium or Grey. We've never ever lost to you guys. So, because we've never played you. So we never lost, so totally undefeated. So I must say that was amazing. And I must say that I played rugby in high school, and my dad didn't allow me. So I used to fraud his signatures because he was Portuguese. He wanted me to play for Primrose Spurs football. And I was like not that great a player. I was very good at staying on my feet, but then, missed the goals in the end. But I started playing rugby for the school, and I loved it. And I played 15, and then I really, in matric, at the end of standard 9, I started playing first team, and I made it into number 8. And that was the best ever. I had this amazing season. I just didn't score in one game. So I was like, Tachman was my number 8, but I played like Bobby. I'd go for glory and score tries. And I actually won the Bradley Becker Memorial Award, which was the biggest award at our school. So for a Pora, that was amazing. And because I was scoring tries, one day my dad found out I was playing rugby, because they went to his cafe and they told him, "Hey, your son just scored this amazing try." And my dad says, "But he doesn't play rugby." And then he found out. So I got scrummed in the house that day and mauled and rucked and everything. And then he went to go see our very first game, and the game was abandoned in the 19th minute for a big fight that blew up between the two schools. And he came and he left, and he said, it was Sir Pierre van Reineveld. And, the next day, 6 of the best, if we wanted to stay in the first team, or otherwise you get dropped. So, and if one guy said, yes, 6 of the best, we all had to go for it. So obviously we had our captain standing up for all of us and choosing. So we all went for it. But yeah, that was it. East Rand, being a Pora, playing rugby, and then becoming totally South African. I became totally South African. My friends, the way, I was into cricket, into tennis, into everything. But, I just missed the talent to make it further. But it was great. You know what I'm saying? I could have said it was an injury, but it wasn't. It was just talent.
And then at 18, you started your first business, or a business. Maybe you started a business before that, a microbrewery. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, like, Gurthro said already, you got to do what you got passion for, and I had passion for beer. So I thought, life's too short to drink bad beer. So I thought, SAB at that time was a monopoly. It was like 99.99999%. Everything was Lion or Castle. So I started brewing my own beer. And it was called Machu Picchu and Sophia Town. So, I went into the market that didn't have a beer with their brand. So Sophia Town, which was, Soweto, but I called in a bit of the tradition and the heritage and the music and all that. So it became super popular. And then Machu Picchu, which actually had ads running on Radio 5 at that time in the morning. And the very first ad was like this, screaming in this forest, like in this jungle. And then it said, "You just witnessed the birth of Machu Picchu." It was like a woman giving birth. And then the next advert was this guy peeing just for like 45 seconds. And it said, "Naturally spirited, you can drink so much more." So, I could only afford one ad a day. So the ad had to be remembered. So the radio station would play it again because people would ask to play it again. So the other ad, I didn't have much budget, so it was a quick one. It was just a dog got kicked. And then it said, "Machu Picchu, we don't hurt animals." But no one knew what the hell happened, So it was all weird. But I got on the radar. I sold a lot of beer. And then obviously SAB at that time was quite conservative. And they went to everywhere they are selling beer, and they gave beer for free and fridges for free and shirts for free and umbrellas for free. So it was a great experience, for about 5 years. It was the best, I was loved because I produced beer. Everybody loves you. If you're a Springbok or you produce beer, those are the two things you need to do, So I drank a lot because you have to test it. So it was good. And then, when it didn't go bankrupt, but, I couldn't sell my beer. And in the end, it actually I actually sold it out to a group in Pardon Island that now actually brews the Jack Black So the brewery kept going, and I was probably a little bit ahead of my time, because a little bit later, then we went in, SA opened up, and then everybody wanted foreign beers and microbreweries and all that. So sometimes, you're ahead of your time, and that can be failure. So you shouldn't be too hard on yourself. But the experiences and everything I learned from a very early age was amazing, that you've got to keep your name clean. Because the day I stopped brewing beer, I had so many offers of people who wanted to do business with me, like open up and give me funding to do something. And then that's when I decided, no, I'm actually going to go to Angola. I thought I wanted, it was when the rand was also collapsing. So I thought, I didn't want another SAB crushing me. So I thought I'll go to Angola. It sounds a lot easier, And then I went to Angola, and it really was an opportunity. I had my 2 boys there. I just had so much time with my wife. We got to travel, and I got to really make an impact in Angola, because it needed everything. So I was able to be an entrepreneur there, and I'm, again, as Coach G said there, you're blessed, when you actually you go after what you want. You got to act, you got to do it, and then you'll start get the blessings start coming in. You can't just expect blessings but do nothing. It's I often say it's there was this guy who wanted to win the lottery, and he kept praying to God, I need to win the lottery. If I win the lottery, I'll do so much good. I'll do so much good. And then, he prays again to God. He said, you see, that guy won the lottery, and he's not doing any good with the money. He's spending it, and I would do good. And then after about 15 years, God got a little bit tired of this prayer, and he says, George, you need to buy a ticket. And that's the thing. You have to also do your part, And many people wait for everything to be perfect, or they don't want to take the risk and all that. You learn nothing from waiting for perfect times and for doing nothing. Obviously, sometimes your scrum will collapse and you'll get pushed backwards, but that should be what drives you to come back up and fight for it again, and show what you're all about. So it's that was my life sort of in that period.
That's excellent, Tom. so many life lessons, and we're just 5 minutes in. It's so good, and knowing Gurthro, I think it's going to be good themes of reinvention. That's going to happen all through today, all through the show. When Gurthro spoke now, I've the specific memory of him end of 2009, 2010, and we had this fitness trainer, Basil Gassis, at the Bulls. And me and Gurthro, in the front row, or the forwards, we've got this little bit of a sickness. So as soon as we stop running, we swell, for no particular reason. Inflammation. And after one particular, I can't remember specifically if it was 2009 to 2010. I think that was the one when Gurthro went on this. He only ate green shakes for breakfast, or like spinach and liver cleanse. And I don't know, and he rocked up at 4 and 5 in the morning to train. And if you get this impression of an angry bear, a bear with something in his paw, who's just like, and Gurthro is a very big human to be aggressive. When he's aggressive around you, everyone walked about 15 meters around him. No one wanted to be in his way. But that what I particularly remember is that commitment that he had, and we'll always when I see him now, is developing Coach G, and when you did the training things on your Instagram and stuff as well, is when you spoke about when you were young and running, is that commitment you made over that to 2009, 2010, because you ended up Player of the Year, South Africa Rugby Player of the Year in 2010, just through pure discipline, hard drive, commitment, didn't let anyone tell you what to do, what not to do, no risk taken. That's hats off. I envy people willing to take the risk and willing to go further. And speaking of which, so 2010, after that wonderful World Cup in Australia, New Zealand, sorry, you decided to to pull up your wickets and go to France. Take us a little bit through that decision making. Why did you go to France?
Yeah, so, firstly, Flip, it was always great. I always loved those training sessions. We always pushed each other, and, you were a hard worker yourself. And, so being South African, and when you play in the front five, just driving past McDonald's, you would just pick up 2 kilos without eating, so that was a condition. It hasn't been diagnosed yet, but it was self-diagnosed by the front five. But yeah, going back, before I talk about going to France, I think it's about understanding, you speak about discipline. I think no matter whether you're an athlete or whether you're an entrepreneur or you're in the corporate space, if you're not driven by something which has a deeper meaning, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And you need to go even further back to me dealing with the disappointment of not playing in the final in 2007 in the World Cup. And, the decisions were justified. I respect it, and I knew exactly why Jake made this decision, and I was still grateful to be part of it, still being part of a squad. And that took me a while to get over that. And then you go fast track, where it was supposed to be my so-called time, 2008. We won that game against the ABs in Dunedin. And then a game later, I got dropped. I got chased away like a dog from the hotel there in Pretoria and said I wasn't going to go to Cape Town. So it was a crazy thing for me, but it also comes down to having my Bulls family. I'll be honest with you, if I didn't have my Bulls family, I probably wouldn't have gotten through that. The support of my teammates, the support of the staff. I knew no matter what went wrong, I had that one consistent thing in my life, and that was the Bulls. And, that's why, in the future, I would love the players of today to experience what we had. And in order to do that, you need the right people. But 2009, Flip, you know as well, as the headlines in South Africa said, Gurthro got castroed. Played against Castro Giovanni. I got smashed. I got dominated. I got humiliated. And I embarked on a 2-week journey where I literally had to go find myself. And that meant visiting a few pubs in the UK, visiting a few nightclubs in Paris, and literally finding myself and asking myself some tough questions. And 2009 was one of the biggest crossroads in my rugby career, because that's when everybody was judging me. Everybody was calling me to call it quits and say that I'm done. And it wasn't about proving people wrong. It was about proving myself right. That I have the skill set, I have this God-given talent, I have what it takes to play it, and I need to reach my destiny. I need to fulfill it. And that's what drove me all this time, doing those crazy shakes and being angry because I was drinking Nutri-Greens and the velocity diet of Basil, and doing those 5 a.m. sessions in the gym whenever all you guys were still sleeping, because I knew what I wanted to achieve. But that couldn't have been done alone. I had a team. I had guys like yourself. I had Gary, I had Victor, I had Bucky's. All those guys, they knew what I wanted to do. You guys knew, even though I didn't verbalize it, but you guys knew it. And then I was fortunate enough in 2010 to finally get back my spot in the Springbok team, because I didn't play the whole of 2009, even though I played the odd game in the British and Irish Lions. But I lost my spot because Tandai was on the scene and he was performing really well. He was doing really well. So with all due respect, he deserved it. And it was up to me to make a change. I wasn't questioning selection. I was questioning myself. What do I need to do to push that needle, to move that back? What am I going to do to achieve my goals? Because only myself can do it, no one else. And, when I got that opportunity to play again in 2010 and get awarded Player of the Year, but what you need to know as well, when I played my first test match after more than a year in Cape Town on my birthday against France, the inspirational words of Peter de Villiers was, please, don't go out there and embarrass yourself. You've had last year you were shit. This year you are less shit. So don't go out and embarrass yourself. Like just before we about to go into the field, I'm like, what the hell, dude? Maybe it was his psychology. I don't know. Maybe that's just who he was. But accelerating forward, Flip, and just I think that then, after achieving what I achieved in 2010, I was a man on a mission. With the Bulls, we won the Super Rugby again. We won the Currie Cup in 2009, back-to-back with the Super Rugby. And then I asked myself, okay, you've won 3 Super Rugbies, you won a Currie Cup. What's next? What's next? And that's when I realized that I want to go to France. I want to go play in the European Cup back then. I wanted to win a title in Europe. I wanted to win a French title. And that became my goal. And that was one of the biggest reasons, because I needed to get out of my comfort zone again. Because when I go into my comfort zone, I pick up weight and I get a bit lazy, like we all do. I'm a human being. I'm not perfect. And I went to France because I needed to get out of my comfort zone. I wanted to learn about a new culture. I wanted to learn to speak a new language. I wanted to evolve as a human being. I wanted to prove to myself that I can go to another country and I can still continue to level up my performance. And that's what I wanted to achieve. Yes, we can argue. At the age of 30, you're chasing a good salary. Who doesn't? That's life, that's business. But it was driven about experiencing another country, experiencing something different. And I think to all our listeners and the viewers that are following the show today, if you're not willing to go into that fear zone, and Tim just mentioned, you just got to start and you just got to go for it. You just got to go for it. At that stage, was it the right decision? Who knows? Because potentially I was on track to be part of a group that, and we did it, I could have potentially have become a legend in South Africa, and I'm like crazy, but I decided to go play in a team where there were other legends, where I'm not the only guy in the team, and that itself was scary. And I think the important lesson from that is that you got to put yourself in an uncomfortable position at times to discover firstly who you are, what you're capable of, and you got to give yourself the opportunity to learn. And you spoke about reinvention. I mean, that's what we're all doing, Flipper, aren't we? We are rediscovering ourselves as former athletes. And also at the end of the day, it's one thing that I've learned that, yes, I was nominated Player of the Year. I won that award, but titles don't define you. A title doesn't mean that you're someone that's brilliant and great. So that's what drove me in a nutshell, going to France, that experience, creating new memories, and also proving to myself that I can play in a foreign country and also perform at the level and even more than like I did back at the Bulls.
That's awesome, Gurthro. Tim, you've also experienced that pull and moved countries more than once and started over in a new context. What was it like landing in Angola? What was it like landing in Portugal? What was the biggest obstacles you had to face in creating success in those new contexts?
Yeah, like when I said that, I'd lost basically everything, it's actually not true, because, again, I never lost my family. I'd got married a year before. It got really tough when Lydia married me. I was like on top of the world, and then a year later, actually, when she married me, I was also looking quite good. I had a six-pack, and that disappeared as well. I don't know what happened. I was probably also inflammation from that age on. I don't know. But, I had the family, and that was amazing, and the Portuguese family is a big thing. So it's I always had that. Had great friends, I've still got my high school friends, my primary school friends. Two of my primary school friends still work with me in the BGA project, so I had that. And those foundations mean a lot, those foundations. And as I said, and then your values and your ethics that come with you. Because I've always been one of those people that I prefer to lose my money than other people's money, so I prefer to, bite the bullet than have someone else bite the bullet. So it's like a lot of these old school values. And obviously, when you have these old school values, you start finding a few other people with these old school values. And I think that's when it gets a little bit better for you. You're never truly alone. So a lot of my friends are like that, and so on. And when I started new, I still had the reputation, so it opened doors, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I've got no regrets. I think losing that, the brewery and starting all over was the best university degree ever. I think it was so, so good. And everything I learned from it, and, it was just amazing. And everything I went through, because also it cleans out your life of a lot of issues, I remember the stress I was going through, the anxiety you're going through, you've got to pay salaries, you're paying taxes, you're paying everything except yourself. And it's like a hole that you keep digging bigger. So I learned to stop digging. That's the first thing when you want to close a hole. Stop digging. Don't keep digging. But it's a difficult decision to make. When do you stop digging? When do you actually realize that you're not being persistent, you're just being stupid? So I learned a lot of those kinds of things where, my idea was I'd buy SAB, not them me, so you learn. But when you're young, it's very, very important. And I think you do learn by doing, you learn from experiences. There's no other way. So, when I got to Angola, I had a good reputation. I got going. I was, again, very adaptable. You've got to, with the experiences you have in life, they prepare you for successes. All the failures prepare you for the successes, without a doubt. If you never fail, you're never also going to be truly successful, So those kinds of things start to happen. And I was, again, I found good partners. We had different strengths. He was good in operations. I was good at the networking side, finding clients, finding the opportunities, and so on. We grew something amazing. Our shareholders that came in was the Norwegian Sovereign Fund. So, we got this amazing due diligence done, and they ran the finances. So we're probably the cleanest Angolan business in the world. They had this fund to invest in businesses, and they only invested in us and a little farm because they could never do due diligence. It would always end up after a week, they had to give up. So, that was great. And then I just, I fell in love with creating impact. I saw the impact we were creating. We had projects where we were doing cataract operations, laser operations. We managed to do so many good things by, having a business that made money, and then we could do good things, so that's where BGA came from as well, like a profit for purpose. We were doing that in Angola and so on. So it was great. The employees that I've still got there, are still the same employees. The first guy I ever saw when I walked out the airport, he still works for us, so it's crazy. Those kinds of things are crazy. As I said, maybe I'm just very bad at firing people because it seems like all my friends are still with me, but it is what it is. And again, the other thing is I really do believe that when you do find your purpose, as, Coach Stu was saying, and you've got passion and you've got more, you've got something else inside you, it's like a fire, then you've got a superpower. And then if you're also, blessed enough to be able to work with people you admire and you like, that fire becomes like even bigger, and then you're going to go through tough times. But if you learn to be transparent, to also tell people, listen, we're going through a tough time. How do we get out of this? Don't hide it. Don't, in the beginning, I used to take it all on myself, I would come to work happy, etc., but I knew the stress we were under. Now I share it more. I say, listen, guys, we have to think about this. Like, what do we do? How are we in this together? And I think the team loves it a lot more because they feel like they're also part of this. And you know what? They also feel like they need to deliver more. So I've always been, I remember when I interviewed Jack Welch, and it was one of the best interviews I've ever done in my life. I was lucky enough to interview quite a few really interesting and inspiring people. But him, I spent an afternoon with him in New York, and he told me something. He said, Tim, I've always fired the bottom 10% of my people, and it's something that you should look at. And then I said, Jack, like I've always just worked with the 10%, my top 10%, and let them worry about the other 90%. I've really always given them the power, empowered in there. And then he told me, Tim, I think you've got the future way of working. I was the past. And then he also gave me some more advice. And I think it's good advice because I think, you guys you've got a podcast that is to try and impact people and so on. And he also told me, when he was a young kid, he was Irish descent. All the families around him had like 12 kids, and he was only kid. And he used to go to school, and walking back home, he'd get beaten up, and like it was the worst time of his life. And the one day he walks in, he's just been beaten up, he's bleeding and everything. His mom, tells him the next day, what happened, Jack? So he says, I just got beaten up. So he says, okay, wash up and be a little tougher tomorrow. He thought, What do you mean be a little tougher tomorrow? I mean, surviving and all that. And he says that that's what he forgot when he became a dad. He says he made everything so simple for his kids. He gave them everything. He never let them get beaten up. He didn't let them get a little tougher. And he says he's got good kids, but they're not going to change the world. Like, he employed 800,000 people. It was unbelievable. And I think it's that, I think our backgrounds, as you said, it was tough. You went through all those things. You had to support the All Blacks. I can't even imagine that. That must have been the worst thing ever, coachly. So, and then, you got through it. You got pushed back in the scrum and all that. That's life. There's all these ups and downs. There's all these times where you do doubt yourself with arts. Question, but if you've got that support, you've got those foundations, you've got those values and ethics, I think, and then if you've got faith, I think as well, because that's one thing I've always had in my life. I was lucky enough to have a grandmother who read the Bible and told me tomorrow the sun will come back up, and, pray to God, he'll give you everything, and make your problems his problems. Hey, I was passing on so many problems to him, so I think you need that faith, you need that light, you need that hope. And if you've got those things, you've got something that many people don't have, and it allows you to hang around until everything changes, and then you back up, and then you're going again, and then either you've learned a lot or you think you're just great, but you shouldn't. You should just remember you learned a lot, and because it's a tough times, but those are the times that really forge you, I think, without a doubt.
Some very good stuff in there. So, I know Jack Welch, he's like, what's his book winning, or I can't remember, but I love Jack Welch. He's at all the leadership books, and 70-20-10 principle. Yeah, you got to interview some brilliant people. Gurthro, le joie de vivre. So we both still in France, enjoying the good life that France has to give. But it's not always a smooth road in France. Mainly because of the French. Yourself as well, when you got to Toulouse, it wasn't always a smooth road. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I had this idea in my mind when I arrived at Toulouse. Okay, it's going to be good, it's going to be easy, it's fine. And then I thought at least everybody spoke a certain level of English, but then I just realized that they don't care. They don't want to speak like you in their country. And I remember those awkward silences, arrive at training and you're like, bonjour, ça va. And then crickets. You're like, you don't know what to say because you can't communicate. Yeah, France, I wish, and that's what I always tell players, a lot of players don't make it in France because, one, they don't embrace the culture. They try to constantly compare to where they were before. And in the beginning, I was still constantly doing that. I said the way we were training wasn't the right way, and I wasn't always agreeing with what we were doing. But the big adaptation was not being able to express yourself in the way you used to. Flip, you knew me, before a game, I would lose my shit because I wanted to make sure that everybody's ready to go to war. We needed to conquer and destroy. We all had our roles in the team. You had your calmer leaders like Victor and Fourie. They didn't do that. They were more calm and meticulous in their wording and everything like that. And guys like myself and Gary had a different role. But coming to France was a huge reality shock. Once you get over that honeymoon period, and once you've eaten a croissant every single day and a chocolatine and all those stuff, then reality sets in. And it's like, where's my people? My friends, my family. I'm alone. It's all good. You're walking in town and you hear everybody, oh, Steenkamp, okay, bonjour, ça va, super, gros match, it's fine, that's great. But then you find yourself, okay, shit, I'm alone. I've moved my whole family across. What now? Then reality sets in. Your wife, she had a job when she was in South Africa, and now she doesn't. You got 2 kids. You got another one on the way. She's sitting at home. She's dealing with everything so that you can chase your dream. And And I won't lie to you, that's the harsh reality of relocating to another country. And the French people are great. I'll be honest with you, we've met some amazing people we met when we just arrived. But I think that was the biggest challenge in the beginning, not having family. And that's why it was important. I was fortunate enough to be surrounded with some amazing people. And back then, still my friend today, an agent, Damien Dussault, he did a lot of stuff for me, helped me massively. And the support was key. And we don't always have that as foreign players. And the big challenge for me was that G was in South Africa, the Blue Bulls player. He needed to find himself again, because what got me going as well was motivating the team, inspiring the team before a game. But by doing that, so I'm like, listen, you just said that, so you better show up. You better pitch up. You can't give us great speech. You can't get the guys pumped up and then, like they say in French, So that was that, and not being able to express myself. That was tough. That was hard. But then it comes to a point, like Tim just said, you learn. You got to adaptability. Then I realized, you know what? I'm not in South Africa anymore. I'm not in the same system. I can't change the system. I've got to find myself within the system. And when I made that mind shift, I started learning the language. I started to become more patient and realized, listen, this is not my house. I'm a guest in the house. All right? So now it's all about, what am I going to do to bring my edge to this team? What am I going to do to show who I am with the French culture, with that? And I think that was the biggest thing, Flip, that adaptation period, and something which we are not prepared for, the culture shock. I remember going into the gym, the Bulls gym back in the day, when we walked into the gym, let's go. We would pump each other up. We would encourage each other. We were shouting and screaming. Unless you were Donnie Rousseau, who was just walking up and down, sitting on a stabilizer ball, not lifting any weights at all. But he did his job on the field. Then he would walk into a gym, and the French players would be eating a croissant and having an espresso in the gym. I'm like, dude, what are you guys doing? This is a place of work. And they were like, oh, gee, calme-toi, easy. You're too serious. You got to enjoy life. And you know what? And that's where I realized, and that's where I think for the first time, I realized in certain times in my career, I've always gone to the extreme side of things. Either I was all in or I was all the way out. I would lose weight, I would pick up weight. I would go out of shape, get back into shape. Lose form, get back into form. It was always to the extreme. And I think there for the first time, I finally figured out what was balance. You're coming there, you got to work, and you got to graft. And it was just unbelievable. The experience, playing for Stade Toulousain back then, going in front, is not the same amount of people we're used to in South Africa, smaller stadiums, but the atmosphere was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. And that period of adaptation wasn't easy. And once again, I think that's one of the biggest lessons I learned, I think, was adaptability, finding balance. Actually, listen here, there's times that you need to switch off. There's times that you actually need to just spend with your family. But we talk a lot about, we throw this word around loosely, resilience. So resilience, I don't believe it's something that can just be taught. You can work hard at it to try and develop it and stuff, but it comes through life experience, that no matter what gets thrown at you, that you find a way to move forward. And I don't know if you know this, but you remember in 2014 when I had that catastrophic game against Argentina, I got bumped in the scrum. Bam. And I got back to Toulouse. And I'm waiting to see my family. My daughter my youngest was born back then, so I'm looking forward to seeing her. I haven't seen her for months. And no disrespect to my agent, and my agent standing at the airport. I'm like, dude, what are you doing here? Where's my family? No, gee, it's just for us to spend some time. And get in the car. I'm like, listen, stop BSing me. What's up? And so I probably had one of my worst games for the Springboks after 2009. And then he breaks the news in the car for me. Gee, the club wants you to leave. You're done. I'm like, what? I didn't even play for them. He's like, no, well, the coach Guneves, he saw your game against Argentina. He doesn't want that. So now I'm in the car. I'm like, how do I break this to my wife? We have relocated. We moved in 2011. All the kids over, took them out of school, everything. I still had 2 years left on my contract. And anyway, next day I go to the club. Thought everything was going to be all hunky-dory. It's fine, just going to chat. They will probably talk to me later in the week. And the coach greets me. Bonjour, ça va? And then he says to me in French, have you found a club yet? I'm like, dude, I just learned this yesterday. And I'm like, nah, this is ridiculous. Then the recruitment officer comes to me. Gee, have you found a club? I'm like, guys, I just arrived from the Springbok tour. I just literally arrived. He's like, just give me time. And that's what I said. You know what? Stuff it. I'm going to get in a fight now. I'm going to put on my gloves and I'm ready to go. And I don't need a mouth guard. I don't need headgear. Let's go. And I played for 2 months with a bazooka a gun against my head, knife in my throat, and a bazooka up my arsehole. Right? Any one of those three could have killed me. Right? Anyone would have gone. That's how it felt. Playing under pressure consistently, training under pressure consistently. And you know what? And it comes down to, we throw the word purpose as well. And back then in our reason for being, in French is a raison d'être, and it was, I'm like, I need to do this for my family. In the past, my driving force was I wanted to show what I'm capable of doing, that I can be an elite athlete, that I can achieve great things on the field. But then it changed. I'm doing this for my family. I need to protect my family. And that's what I was doing. And I grafted. And I had to have a hard look at myself. The things that I've done in the past didn't work anymore. I needed to acknowledge myself that I've taken a dip. And then 2 months later, I'm in the gym. And I'm probably playing some of the best rugby of my life. And they still kept on every single day for 2 months, asked me if I found a club. And even before games, like the one game I remember, the coach says, oh, gee, when you play for South Africa, you are good. But when you play for Toulouse, you are shit. In front of the whole team, stuff like that. I've never been criticized like that in my life, publicly. By a coach. They had ways of coming around, whether it was Heineke Meyer, Frans Ludeker, they had a way of speaking to us. But being humiliated to him like that, I've never experienced that. But after 2 months, he comes to me in the gym. Oh, gee, it's good to see you back. It's okay. You can stay. I give you another 2 years.
It must have been amazing to get that bazooka out your ass, eh?
But Flip, I know it was a long-winded answer, but I think what France taught me is that we are capable of overcoming everything. When we are home in South Africa, and I love South Africa, I'm proudly South African. When we have a support system around us, people to pick up the pieces, but when there's nobody else around you to pick up the pieces, it is nobody else. That's where you discover really who you are and what you are capable of achieving. And that lessons served me till today. I made a big decision in July to stop becoming the scrum coach at La Rochelle so I can chase my dreams, because I don't just want to be a scrum coach. That's not my destiny. That's not the path that has been laid out for me. And I would be a hypocrite if I'm telling people, get out of your comfort zone, but I'm just staying in mine. But yeah, so that's what France has been for me so far.
That's amazing, Coach G. That whole idea of the adversity shaping our grit and our ability to adapt is such a deeply resonant thought. Tim, for you, you land in Portugal, you make the decision to go to Portugal, and you end up on the Shark Tank, and I assume that became a springboard for a brand new career in Portugal. Tell us a little bit about that and what adversity did you face in that journey?
Yeah, it's exactly what we've been discussing. You've got to, I always have South Africa in my heart, and I always, I love what we are. We're positive people. We're straightforward. We're people we can rely on and on. But also when we do go into foreign places, we've got two modes. Either we want to just stick to South Africans and do braflays every weekend and live in a compound or you've got those South Africans who actually want to learn a new language, eat new food, see new things, learn history. And those ones really have a lot of fun, and I think you need to have that mentality. You've got to get in with that mentality. And my mentality was, I always had a Portuguese past. My dad was born in Portugal, my mom in Mozambique, me in South Africa, my two boys in Angola, and my daughter in Portugal. So it's like a whole 360. And I've always been, blessed enough to have a big heart. So I've always had South Africa in my heart, and Portugal in my heart. When Portugal played football, I was like, always wanting them to win, and geez, they didn't. They wouldn't kick to goals. They would do everything but score. And then, I was lucky enough to have the Springboks. So, they were winning, and it was, so I was always a very fortunate person. And I think when I got to South Africa, to Portugal, I brought my South African positiveness and all that. And when I got here, 2010 was a tough time. There was this thing, they always say that a once in a lifetime crisis. What I've learned is that there isn't a once in a lifetime crisis. It seems like there's a crisis every 5 to 6, 7 years, and you go through them. That's it. And they asked me to be on a program called Shark Tank. I actually got someone else to go on it, and then that person had an issue, couldn't get on it. So then I had to just get on it, and I said I'll do a season. And it was a great season. We beat Marsh the Chef and all this, and I became in the polls. I was like 90% the Shark they loved the most, because I was like the positive one, because that was South African. So I would look at people and I'd see them instead of their business. I wouldn't be going into all the numbers. I would look at the person and see, could they run a team? Were they up to changing their mind and pivoting and this and that. So it was lovely. It was a great experience. I met a lot of wonderful Portuguese people. As Coach was saying, met all these French people. When you're open-minded and you've got an open heart, you do meet the most amazing people. And, from there on, you start your network. And obviously, once you go on TV, it opens a lot of networks, So, the program, I invested through the program. It took a lot of time because I really put in a lot of effort on those projects and all that. I put everything else on hold until I could get all that done. But it was just great because I saw all the, there was no ecosystem of startups in Portugal at that time. The banks were useless. There was no angel investors, no VCs, no nothing. But there was talent. And what would happen is you just leave the country because there was no ecosystem for that. So I must say, myself, another guy called John Vasconcelos, and so on, we probably became the most important people at setting up an ecosystem in startups. And then I just got tired of, investing, and I thought I'd go on my own. And in Portugal, it's tough. Business is tough out here. Europe, it's tough. There's regulations, legislations, and every day there's more and more and more. And, they're actually ruining it. They're killing it. They're killing business. Like anyone who's got an entrepreneurial side is going to get punished over and over. And anyone who wants to just receive a subsidy will be rewarded, But, our spirit, anyone who wants to do more and get out their comfort zone, they're not going to be happy with subsidies. So that was always my thought. And then I just decided, I needed to get back in there and do my own startup again. And that's when I found, what I do today. So it was a good trip. It was a voyage you have to take. I've learned, when you're doing something that doesn't challenge you, it's because you're probably doing the wrong thing. You got to get back out there. And then I've also learned as you get older that you need a lot less than you think you need. And then actually when you have a lot, it's just a lot of problems. I always talk about you go through these 3 stages in life. You go through need, where you do need some stuff. You need you need to live somewhere. You need to have a job. You need to be able to provide for your family. And then once you've got that, then you actually think you need a lot more. And you go through greed, where you think you need more cars, you need bigger TVs, you need more rooms, and you have kids. You need more because you're sort of competing with your neighbor. And then all that stuff is just giving you responsibilities, and that, it's giving you stress that you don't really need all that stuff. And then if you're lucky enough, you get to freed, where you actually decide, I'm going to get rid of a lot of this stuff. Get rid of the stuff, and you start to do things you really enjoy. You don't care about your neighbor. You're actually happy driving, something that isn't the newest. You don't have to learn every new button, and it doesn't beep all the time, and it doesn't stop you from going fast, and you got to put a seatbelt, and all these things. So you get happy with what you have, and that was it. I stopped playing the lottery. I stopped anything that could make a lot of money. I tell my friends, no, I don't want to do that, and they would ask me, but why not? I said, you know what? Let's say we win the lottery and you get €1 billion. You've got to change cars. You've got to change a house. You've got to change the wife, because now you need a billionaire wife. No. I've already done. I'm in a good space. I don't want any of that stuff. So that was it. I started to become content and grateful for what I have. And then again, it's your family. In the end, it's your family. That's all you're going to leave behind. The rest means nothing. So that's it. And then as you get a little bit older, gray hair and all that, you see how lucky you are just to have health, and you see around you what's not, the people around you, people you love, and you see what they're going through and all this, and geez, and you just start to say, what I need is my health. I just need to be content, have a job, to be able to go on a holiday, be able to spend time with those I love, take those I love with me everywhere I go, And then also those loved ones, they're stubborn and they start leaving you. You know what I'm saying? Then you're stuck with that wife, that actually becomes your best friend again. You're excited about getting all together. It's amazing. It's like, this whole way of living. But it's like in your mind, you never thought of it that way. You would think you'd always be needing more. You'd need this, you'd need that. No, you really need a lot less, because you're going to go without anything. You know what I'm saying? So, and especially like, our family had lost. We built again. I lost, built again, and all that. And I don't want to, I remember telling my boys when I started BJ, listen, I can either leave you guys some money or let me just put it into BJ. And I promise you, the best thing we're going to do is BJ, because if I leave you with money, you're going to marry the wrong person, have the wrong friends, and your life's going to be shitty. I'm telling you. So let me, use your inheritance and build something that one day you guys have as a legacy as well, and you can keep going or whatever. But I think again, they were well. They had a good upbringing. My wife as well was this amazing mom. So it's they said, yeah, for sure. Let's give others, and we'll be happier. So it just worked. Yeah. So that's it. It's keeping things basic, and it's a lot more difficult than it sounds. But once you get into the habit of doing it and saying no and not thinking of, like you see an ad, just change it. I don't look at watch ads anymore. I don't, before I used to collect watches, but why? Now I look and I think, what a dummy. Like, what was I doing? You know what I'm saying? It's crazy, it's, yeah.
That's wonderful. There's so many things that I want to drag and go deeper and drag and go deeper, we only have as much time, and we have a lot of stories to tell more. Gurthro, so yeah, you stopped playing in 2019. 17. It feels like yesterday. Went into coaching and ventures, and how did you decide, okay, this is the end now? Because you went to Toulouse and then you had a little bit of a stint at Stad, went straight into coaching. How did you decide to stop? How did you decide to do what you're going to do? What's the next step?
Yeah, so, Flip, a lot of people don't realize that. I didn't want to stop in 2017. I was still physically and mentally, I was in a great place. I actually invested in equipment at home, having a gym at home, having certain equipment. I invested in working with the French S&C coach to train differently, prepare my body differently, to optimize my performance, and it was working. It was going really well. And then I had to deal with the harsh reality of the end of an era. We were Toulouse. We had some great players like Terry Dusautois, Pato Albacetti, you had Luke McAllister, all these guys. And it was time for Toulouse to clean out, new coach. And it was tough for us, the old guard, to kind of accept that. But it was the right decision at the time. If you look at all the success Toulouse has achieved over the last few years, it was spot on. So I actually just spoke earlier to Brian Liebenberg when I asked him this question, how did he develop his concept of catch and think? And he said, gee, it was like the night before exams and you realize you didn't study and you got to write it tomorrow. And that was kind of the situation I was sitting in when I realized when I was told they wouldn't sign me on for +1. And firstly, this is another lesson in France. When you get a 2+1, you think it's your right to activate that optional year. But actually, the club decides if you can activate it. First, they will say yes, then you can say yes or no. But if they say no, it's just no. And then I had to deal with the harsh reality. Okay, I need to look for a new gig. And I wasn't too worried, to be honest with you, Flip, because there was offers. There was like 10 offers. And then for some reason, and I know exactly what happened, those offers disappeared. All right, it just takes one person to plant a bad seed. And those offers disappeared. And this is not a place to talk about who that was and what they did, because that's something which I discovered years later. But then I was at home, and it was 2017. I wasn't ready to stop. I wasn't ready to say goodbye to the game. And probably for 3 months, all I did was train in my garage. I had my rower, I had my weights, I had a squat rack. I trained every single day, not knowing what's going to come. Potentially at some stage I'd say, you know what, I got to give up. I remember I used to harass my agent. Do we have something? What's happening? Why do we have something? What's going on? And all I did was I just started preparing myself for that opportunity. And then I came to Stade Francais. Then I got there as a medical joker and I was like, wow, this is an amazing blessing. Honestly, I was at the stage where I could say, okay, it's done. So when I was at Stade Francais, being away from my family, and I was with the student flat there in Paris, and you know, I was playing and I was there, and it just shows you the misconceptions people have. I was the age of, back then I was 36. I didn't have a preseason, and they were like, no, he's old, it's not going to happen. We did the first fitness test. Who ran in front? Me. Beat the flankers. They were pissed off at me. I did a Bronco test on my own. I ran a 4:54. They were like, what's going on here? And it comes down to everything I've learned in my career. Like, I knew I'm going to give it my best. But then there came a stage where I also had to be honest with myself. I was physically good. I was feeling good. I was mentally good. But I was not performing at the same level anymore. And instead of forcing the journey to continue, I knew, right, it's time for me to stop. It's time for me to focus on life after rugby, because when that +1 was not activated, that actually made me realize I didn't plan ahead in terms of what I'm going to do after rugby. You know, you put money away, you do all those type of things, you invest, but what am I going to do? And that was a decision which was tough. That's where I realized, you know what? I need to get my shit in order. It's time for me to stop. I need to do my coaching because I want to coach. That's what I wanted to do. But it was probably one of the toughest decisions I had to make in my life. And I still remember, you know, it comes back to what we said, Flip, and, you know, Justin, it's with, in France, you don't always have a support system, like people to look after your kids. I mean, back in the day, if I want to go out with my missus, you got to pay 50 euros for a taxi, and then you pay 50 euros for the babysitter, and then you have a meal costs you 100 euros, and then it's another 50 euros back, 250 euros, you know, boom. Like that. And originally I played my last game against Agen. And I always, in the build up to that last game, I think for a month, I played with Morne Steyn, Willem Alberts at Stade Francais. And I would, after each training, I prepared myself. I would just say to them, guys, thanks for the memories. And they're like, what are you talking about? You're still good. And I'm like, thanks for the memories. Because I knew my time was coming. And for that last game, I learned that my family won't be able to make it. My missus couldn't come out. My kids were like, my son was sick, blah, blah, blah. And we couldn't find anyone to look after the kids, so my wife to come. And, you know, being South African, being proud, you know, we don't show any emotions. And I remember running out for the warm-up, and I just looked left, and my whole family was there. And as I was running, I just broke out into tears. And that's where it hit me. This is the end. And I got overwhelmed with them, and not just the end of a journey, but in that moment, in that warm-up, I'm like, what's next? What's next? And the scary part, you know, Flip, not everyone, and one of my biggest regrets, and this is something which I share on my podcast as well, and I tell the listeners, the younger players, invest in yourself in the terms of not just an education, but spend time with the sponsors, spend time with the people that you cross paths with. When you meet people like Tim, for example, be like a sponge, learn. I had to learn on the fly. I wanted to become a scrum coach back then, a specialized coach. I wanted to help professional rugby players level up their performances. Guess what? They didn't want them help because they had a big ego. They didn't think they needed. They felt if they asked me, that means they weren't good enough. But at the end of the day, they would only come to me when they were in the shit. When their contract was up or they were really bad, then they will call me. But that was the time, Flip, when I decided I made peace with it. But that's where I had to focus. Everything that I've learned in my career, all the obstacles I overcame, and let's call a spade as a spade. We as rugby players, we are spoiled, right? We are, because we, for some reason, have an identity crisis when rugby stops. Oh, life is so hard. Oh, this is so tough. Well, this is what this guy's been living since he was 18. So are we that different? And that's where I realized I had a choice to make. And the path wasn't clear. I don't have a degree like you, my man. You got a great business sense and everything. And I was lost. I didn't know how to pitch my services. I was doing scrum sessions, but okay, great. I thought just by doing a post on Instagram, if you want to improve your scrum, send me a DM. What did I get? Crickets. But there I learned again that I needed to earn the trust again. I didn't feel credible as a coach because I was a great player, but I wasn't a great coach yet. And this is also what my podcast is about with the Coach G show, is that when I was a rugby player, I used to be Gurthro. This was a player that was doubting himself. But when I transformed into G, this was someone that was confident, that was driven and was chasing something. And I said, I need to find Coach G. That's the person I need to find. The person that's willing to go above and beyond. But I'll be honest with you, Flip, it wasn't clear, but it aligns a lot with what Tim said. I wanted to create impact, whether it was as a coach, whether it was in the corporate space. And that's where I discovered I had a voice. And that just came through by chance. A former sponsor of the club, he invited me to go do a motivational talk in French. I'm like, I don't feel confident doing that. Speaking French, like, don't worry. I'm going to make a mistake. Like, don't care. And after that talk, people applauded. I was like, what's going on with it? These people like drunk or something? Did they like having a drinks or whatever? What's going on? Because I knew I made a few mistakes there while speaking. But that's where I realized they could feel my passion and they can feel my drive. And it was a massive learning curve. And it's about being consistent. And this is what I love about podcasting. Tim just said, if you got that passion and you got that drive and you're believing in it. And doors were closing down for me as a coach. I would hear things like, sorry, we can't take you as a coach because you played at a higher level than the coach. You can't come to our club because you played at Toulouse. You're going to stay here for 2 years. You're going to share all our series. Now, you can't coach at our club because you're South African. The door's closed. And at the stage, I was treading water. I was like, where do I go? I need, yes, I got chômage, but chômage is going to run out. So that's unemployment for the listeners that are here in France. And then all of a sudden things started happening just by being consistent, putting myself out there, sometimes making a fool. Then I started getting gigs in the corporate space, doing team build sessions, doing webinars. And then I just felt that I had this burning desire to share knowledge, to share my passion with people. And that when I resorted to social media, I don't go on social media for likes or for views. I'm not an influencer. I'm someone that wants to impact people. I want you to change. And the greatest reward from that has been receiving messages from youngsters saying, Coach, I was thinking about committing suicide for a second time, but then I heard your message. I started training. It's been now more than a month. I've lost 10 kgs. Getting messages like that makes it all worth it. Makes it all worth it. And funny, and I think that's the advice I want to give to people is that I'm on a new path now again. I'm reinventing myself again. I'm starting a new challenge. It's scared as hell. I'm scared as hell in terms of like, this thing, what did I do? I should have maybe stayed in my comfort zone, have my fixed salary every month. But no, that's not who I was. I'm not living my dream by just being a scrum coach. I want to be more. And I remember by blasting out my passion, being crazy on Instagram lives and stuff like that. And some people were making fun, but I didn't care. And because of that Instagram live, Jono Gibbs from La Rochelle called me. And he said to me, "G, would you like to come coach at La Rochelle? I loved what you just shared there, your philosophies, your principles, your frameworks. That's what I'm looking for." And that's how I ended up at La Rochelle. And I followed an atypical path. It wasn't, doors didn't open miraculously. And that comes down to the same principle. I'm a former Bulls rugby player. I was conditioned to break down walls. Bring the walls, I will break them down.
You know what's amazing to me is at We Think Out, we often talk about putting ourselves in the position to be lucky, like creating the environment where luck can happen. And like in your story there was 3 or 4 times where you didn't know what's next, but you just did what you needed to do, and then the opportunity ends up coming. So you really put yourself in a position to take advantage of whatever might come your way. That is fantastic. So Tim, for you, BGA came and you dove head deep into basically starting over, like you said earlier, and putting your kids' inheritance into taking a gamble in doing something spectacular. And tell us a little bit about that journey and how you've grown astronomically in the last few years.
Yeah, it was, again, I used to spend a lot of time with my kids. I always thought education wasn't just the school's problem or task, to do. So I used to always take them around with me and so on. So I really became friends with them, And in 2019, we did this other trip, and it was an amazing trip. It was on the Trans-Siberia through Russia, Mongolia, China, then Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, Japan, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, and got back. And then I put them back into a traditional school, a good one, nothing wrong with it, just put them back there. 2 weeks later, I go pick them up and, I'm all excited. So how's it going? What are you learning? And they said, "Dad, it's like just the same as what you did at school." And I thought to myself, yeah, that's not fair. I suffered at school, having to learn all these things I didn't need. And now you back here doing the same thing. So I said, "But what are you learning?" So they said the Romans. And I remember telling them, the Romans again, but you did the Romans last year. Yeah, we're doing it now again, And I thought, it's just not right. So I said, "Well, you know what? I'm taking you guys out of school. You're going to just spend time with me, and we'll start doing some curriculum online." And I remember my eldest started to cry because he wanted to be like a head boy, and all this. He was ashamed. He was 15. My other one was, he wasn't even 15. He was 14 and 12. And he said, no, he doesn't want to. So I said, well, you're going to do 2 months. And then if you want to go back, you go back, And my other one was like, yeah, I'm out of here. I'm going. Because he already had, he was very lucky to have a passion early on. It was all about rockets and things. So for him, school was like him finishing work early and then getting into trouble. And then getting told to go to the side. So that was that. So the 2 of them started. They were my 2 guinea pigs. We didn't know what we would do. I just knew I wanted to do something. I'd been for a long time wanting to do something in education. I'd got involved with Nova University. I became one of their advisors and helped them set up this amazing campus. And then I started. And then after a little while, I looked again and we had 19 kids in my Tim's garage in this place that, it's not supposed to have kids. And there were like all these kids there. And I said, what's happening here? And my wife said, well, another one came here and said, these kids not adapting to school. It's not working. The school's not working. He's a problem. And I just started seeing how many problem kids there were. And it couldn't be the kids, it just couldn't be the kids. So that's when I started to say, look, we're going to change the system and not the kids. And, if we change the system, it will probably fix the kids. And that's what happened, It's normally the system that you're in. Even when you're a rugby player, if you're in the wrong system, you struggle a lot. It doesn't matter if they motivate you. If the next day you go back to the same system, you're still in that system. You're not going to improve. And you're going to have anxiety and you're going to be, feeling mentally down, So we started to change the system. What did we do? Simple things. We just said, look, we'll have a school that's open all year, no holidays. You go on holiday when you want. but the school's open all year. You're able to write exams 3 times a year. So we used the British International Curriculum. So we were able to do, our kids could write either Southern Hemisphere, the Northern Hemisphere exam seasons, and there's an extra exam season. So our kids could write exams 3 times a year. If they didn't do well in Jan, they just rewrote in May. You know what that does to a kid? It takes away a lot of anxiety, because it's not the end of the world. They have 1 exam a year, So we started to do that. We started to have learning coaches. So instead of the teachers, we had the teachers in the background. They would prepare all the curriculum. Kids could go at their own pace. So they would have these 25-minute lessons. They read, they watch, they do a quiz, get 80%, go to the next one. So they would start to see themselves growing mastery. And the faster they went, the more they did, the timeline would come closer. So they would say, if I keep going at this rate, I can finish in 6 months. If I finish, so they would start taking responsibility and ownership of the program. And we just started to see this amazing kids who were naughty doing work, kids that, were very academic doing a lot more work. We started getting some amazing results. We got 2 best in the world students out of like 5 million students. We got 4 best in Europe, best in South Africa, best in Africa, 9 best in Portugal. So the system started to work, and we weren't an academic school, and that was amazing. So we started to attract a lot of sportsmen. So sports kids, surfers, skaters, tennis players, golfers that needed to travel, they could now travel and use their days that they traveled as holidays and then come back and, do that. So that was great. And then obviously we also had those kids who struggled at school. So they started to come in. We started new curriculums. We offered the American, then we offered the up pathway. At 16, you could start your university with us. You didn't have to do your final 2 years. You could start, we'd get you a level 3, you get a high school exit certificate, do another 2 years with us, and then you go and finalize at the university for the final year and you get your degree. And that changed a lot of other kids' lives because they just thought, yes, I'm done by 19, 20, I've got a degree, my parents are happy and I'm out of here. So for a lot of kids, it started to change the way they did things. We also were able to really do some amazing stuff, like our kids in places like Gaza wrote exams through this whole conflict. So they were able to do that remotely. Today, we're making a big impact as well. Like in South Africa, we're now at schools like VHS, Westville. We've got Johannesburg in Wellington, where we actually put hubs in those schools. And those schools, our hubs have been growing a lot, putting kids in that need to do school differently. So they're no longer, as rigid. And obviously, again, a lot of the sportsmen. So we've got some amazing sportsmen at our schools there at BGA in those schools. So they wear the uniform. They do everything. They just do their education differently. So it's amazing. And now we're working with a lot of public schools in Portugal and so on. We've got schools in Spain, in Switzerland, in the UK, Ipswich High, Malvern High, then Mozambique, in Namibia. So it's just been amazing, the things that we've been able to do. We're in Kakuma refugee camps with 30 kids that will go to 300 kids now. So it's been incredible. And, as Coach G said, in the end, it's about impact. Like you fall in love with this. And when you read things and you see how some kids are so worried and they think it's the end of the world. And we keep telling them this because, if you think about every conversation a parent has now with their kids, they tell, this Ukraine war, it's probably the Third World War. This, Middle East conflict, it's going to get bigger. The US is going crazy. And I always keep telling them, it's always been like this, guys. Don't worry about it. When I was growing up, we had, the Middle East conflict was going. We had the Cold War, it was going. We had, the ozone layer. We were all going to get cancer and die. It was cream and long shirts for you. We had Y2K problem. I don't know if you remember that, but the 2000 was going to come and everything was going to end. And then, the earth was going to get cold. It was going to freeze up. We had the day after tomorrow, New York frozen, and now we were going to cook, So I tell them, don't worry about those things. Worry about what you can do and all that. And I think that's what BJ has been. It's been about each one gets their path. Each one does what's best. They all work together. So mixed ages from 12 onwards. So, kids aren't competing. They help each other. We've got this little Aristotle AI that connects kids to each other. So if Gurthro is super good at this, he'll help Flip with that, and it's amazing. And you've got kids in other countries helping each other, in other schools helping each other. So it's just been incredible. So that's my aim. I'm back in South Africa now in Jan and knocking on more school doors, So I haven't given up on Pole Gym. I've been there twice. So I'm going to be knocking on that door again. Haven't got to grey yet. We'll get there as well. But it's great now. We had Pretoria boys the other day going out to go see DHS as a hub, So that was incredible. So it's all these kinds of things that are now happening. So, yeah. So slowly we're getting there. And my 2 guinea pigs did okay. My one guinea pig is at UC Berkeley. So he's there doing politics, philosophy, and economics. And my other one's at Embry-Riddle doing aerospace engineering. So those 2 came out well. And my daughter's still at BGA at 16, and we've told her she's not going anywhere. So she'll stay with us as long as we can. But, and she'll now go with me to South Africa and then to Mozambique. So she'll go with me and my wife, and she gets to also experience things, see things. And that's, again, education, So, yeah, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, education is the key. Whether you learn it in a scrum or whether you learn it in a school.
And some guys should learn, education in a scrum, and others need to do it at school. That's the truth. Because you're not going to get that scrum guy to do the school, and the school guy better not get into a scrum. You know what I'm saying? So it's different strokes for different folks. Yeah.
Yeah. Gurthro, to move a bit full circle, and the lessons you learned from rugby, and you do very well at conveying it to out to the world, and I salute you for that. That's very good. Where do you feel is Coach G going next? What is the unfinished story?
Well, that's tough to say. Obviously, I've got ambitions. Flipped. I want to coach at the highest level. I want to be a forwards coach. I want to be a manager of a team. I have that abilities. I have that skill set. That's why it was important for me to make that shift and change. I need to reset course and put myself out there. But like I always tell the players, you need to have a plan A and a plan A. So. So my one plan A is chasing a dream of becoming an elite level coach and coaching at the highest level, not as a scrum coach. That's something I'm trying to move away from. The only, the upside and the downside is that there's so many coaches that want to learn more about it. There's no resources available for it. So I'm actually in the process now of doing a 6-week cohort with about 13 coaches worldwide at different levels, which is unbelievable. But where's Coach G going, and why I did this full-on rebrand of the show? Why am I starting to refer to myself as Coach G? Is not because I'm looking for an identity. It's not because I'm looking to speak about myself in a third person. It's about sharing my journey as a human being, as a player, as a coach. There's been times of down and out. I mean, if I have to reflect back in the day, when I was a player, there are certain things I'd done which I could have avoided. Sometimes we partied way too much and we had late nights. I wasn't taking care of myself. And I look at myself today. I hardly drink alcohol, focusing on my sleep. I do meditation. I do journaling. I'm focusing on my cognitive load during the day. I have the ability now to identify what tasks I should be doing in a day. And, I think where I'm going, I've always set myself this vision. In 2 years' time, I want to be in a position where I can impact people to a state that they can achieve great things. And ideally, that would be in a rugby team. If that's not the case, that will be in life. That will be in the corporate space. That will be offering programs to people to become more resilient, to overcome those obstacles in times of adversity. And that's what I'm passionate about. That's why I'm in this space. This is why I'm on podcasts. That's why I put posts out on social media. I put things out there because I want to show people that we as rugby players, we are human beings too. And we are not perfect. And by playing in front of 100,000 people doesn't make us special. Yes, we got a special skill set, but it's no different to Tim, what is built with BGA, which I think, congratulations, brother. That's unbelievable. It's amazing what you've created. And, everything considering we are dealing with an anxious generation at the moment. So where's Coach G going? Honestly, I have an idea, but that destination of the second plan A has not been determined because I'm driven by achieving something great. And great not to the sense of a monetary value. Great in something that I just read this. I just listened to this. That's exactly what I needed. In my private community, Coach G and Level Up, I get millions of, not millions, but I'm over-exaggerating now, but loads of messages where players would say, that's exactly what I needed to hear. You know, and it's kind of like continuing to help people. Because I've always said this, one of my biggest regrets of being abroad and not being in South Africa is that I can't help fellow South Africans in person. And this is a way for me to share my message and to share my journey with the hope that it inspires them, that it allows them, it's okay not to be okay. I'm in a depressed state. I'll be honest with you, there was potentially times in my career where I was probably a bit depressed. There's always a reason why you pick up weight. I mean, I take now the last month, but I made the mistake of launching 2 courses at the same time. What an idiot. I was under the pump the whole time. But it was brilliant. I was enjoying it. Started training less, picked up weight. But people need to know that we all have our personal battles. And let's be honest, we all do. Whether you lose a loved one, whether you have a loved one that's ill, something bad happens to you, you lose your job, or you get diagnosed with it, we all have challenges. And that's where it's important. We need to be able to reach out to people. And I really want to create this accessibility to myself as a human being. And I can't speak to everybody personally, but through my message, through the messages that I receive, through the content that I create, it's about giving people the tools from us, not just my personal experience, but from the guests there, from the people, and from the knowledge that I've accumulated. Anything is possible. And I always use this example. When I was in 2010, we were staying at the Cullinan Hotel in Cape Town, Flip. And I remember my dad, he attended a prayer meeting in one of the poorer areas in Paarl. It's called Chicago. So it's a bit sketchy, it's a bit dangerous. And he shared with me, not in 2010, but years later, he said to me, you know what? I attended a prayer meeting years ago, and I walked into the house, there was nothing. There was no food. There was not even bread. There was a fridge, it was empty. Where these people prayed for you for 1 hour. Someone was sitting in the Cullinan Hotel, eating 3 courses a day, sometimes going for second or third helpings. And how is it possible that someone with nothing or with almost zero in the house can pray for someone that has everything? And just saying that gives me goosebumps. And that made me realize my purpose in life is not business. My purpose is not life about creating a brand. My purpose in life is about creating something and leaving a legacy, that what I've done in my career, and I've made my mistakes, that I've laid the path for people to follow their dreams. I've laid the path for people where they know they have that strength within. All we got to do is we just got to unlock it. You got to, sometimes it might take years before you even discover that you have these abilities. And that's why I'm passionate. And I don't think that answers your question where Coach G is going. But I'm telling you, Coach G is going to be consistent. Coach G is going to be showing up every single day for himself, for his family, for the people that supports him. And in my unique way, trying to make a difference and an impact in the world where we do see that certain core values are going out of the window, where we do see, and I'll be honest with you all, where that actually originated as well as a coach. We as coaches sometimes tend to say the new generation, they're different. The new generation, they don't have the same mental toughness, or they don't have the right focus points. They focus on their properties. They focus on this and traveling abroad and all those things. I'm like, okay, but what did we do to educate them? What did we do to educate them? So like, this is how it needs to be done. We expect them to perform. We expect them to perform at the highest level, but we've kind of skipped a few beats by not giving them the steps. And I think that's what I'm trying to do, is giving them the tools, giving them the steps so that, they too can, do something great with their lives, not just as rugby players.
Coach, that's amazing. Okay, so to end up, guys, we want to just give you the opportunity to ask each other a question. So, Tim, if you want to ask Coach G a question, and then Coach G ask Tim, and then we can finish up.
Yeah, Coach, are you available to come coach the Lobos, the Portuguese rugby team? I think we need some help. We've been going a little bit downhill there since we got rid of Laziske. Unfortunately, I think he was so amazing for us. No, but I think my coach for my question, obviously for the coach there, is is the drive. The drive. It's obviously not easy, but what is your main one? You've touched on many, yourself, your family and all that, but what is it, the first thing you think in the morning when you wake up?
Yeah, so, that's a tough one because I think family's right up there. I'm really trying my best to provide something for my family, something that I can leave behind for them, not just like we mentioned earlier, type of inheritance, but more like a legacy, something that they can be proud of. But what drives me, it comes down to the message that I shared earlier. It's really impacting people through what I'm sharing, getting on a mic, showing my true self, sharing my mishaps, what the mistakes that I made, and that I'm a human being, and we're all human beings at the end of the day. And it's all great that we receive these accolades, but that shouldn't define us. And that resonates with something that I recently read, the jersey doesn't define you. Your title doesn't define you. It's about who you are. So the day when I'm no longer on this earth, I still want people to talk about me, not because of what I achieved on the rugby field, but through the values that I shared, for the difference I tried to make, and the sharing this knowledge. I've had so many people in my community say, like, Coach, why are you sharing this for free? Like, yes, I do have courses, but on a daily basis, I'm pitching up. I'm trying to help people, helping coaches, helping players, because I want to empower them with the knowledge. I want to give them the tools I didn't have. I had to discover a lot of those things by myself. But to answer your question, I think first and foremost, is my family, and then it's leaving something behind for the new generation. That's the most important thing, that they still have something to look back at. This crazy coach who started out as a scrum coach and transformed into something completely different.
To flip, I don't know, you're a natural networker. I was on one call with you, and all of a sudden I've ended up here, and so I think you've got a lot to offer. And I just want to know from you: do you think the best is still to come? Do you feel like you've got a lot? Something big is coming.
We were lucky, me and Gurthro Steenkamp. We had Coach Frans Ludeke, and he used to ingrain that in us every day. The best is yet to come, and 100% live by that motto every day. Is that best is yet to come.
All right, good stuff. Well done.
Question for Tim.
Yes, Tim. I think the big question I have, if you, like with everything you spoke about, learning coaches, and I think you're taking education to another level. As someone that has achieved great things in business and has built something from scratch, and somebody that has been ahead of his time, ahead of the game, what advice would you give to rugby players, in terms of turning a concept or an idea into an actual sustainable business? The reason for that is because a lot of rugby players have these great ideas, they have the network, they have the connection, but where they get lost is actually turning that idea into a sustainable business, And I think that's where that's what I'm also trying to do with my podcast with Coach G, is that players learn the basic skills in terms of who they should surround themselves with in order to achieve that. Because we have seen in the past that players put their full trust into certain people, but then things just go sideways. So what advice would you give for a retired athlete, that wants to put something together? He's got this brilliant idea. It's credible, but how to actually transform it into something which is actually a real business?
Look, the first thing you said, I think players do need to be sponges, like you mentioned. They need to go out there and have experiences. They need to spend time with business guys, time with anyone who's doing well at something. If it's an influencer, spend time with him, learn, just see, and be humble about it, and don't worry about asking stupid questions and all that. Like everyone's happy to help someone if they're coming from the right place. I think then going forward is, do a bit of homework, make sure that whoever you're going to deal with, it's like, getting married. You want to know who that person is. You don't want to have to learn afterwards and be open, like be ready to hear bad things, and then don't just ignore them, because a lot of people get told and then they still ignore it and try it for themselves, and then they get a sad story in the end. And then it's about it's not like you can't gamble. You really can't gamble. So there are things that work. You mentioned property. Some get into property. Well, that's a safe one. You're going to put some cash into that, and everything makes sense, and you go step by step, and it works well. Then you can go to the next level and do another one and do another one. But you do need good people in your corner. You can't go into a fight by yourself, and you're not going to fix those cuts above your eyes. You're not going to see them. You're not going to be there, etc. No one's going to have a towel for you and so on. So it's those basic things. Like you got to have good people with you, and then if you've got a major passion, listen to people. If they're telling you it might not work, do a little bit of research. Make sure someone will pay for what you want to give them. You mentioned earlier as well that you wanted to coach everybody, but not everybody wants to be coached. So you need to find out what do they want and listen. Listen a little bit, because you got this one mind, and that's how it's going to go, because that's how you ran through everybody, But now you can't just run through everybody. You need to have those people that are going to be there to help. So I think it's first be a sponge, secondly find good people in your corner, and there are good people out there, and there are people that truly are in a stage in their lives where they're not trying to take advantage of you. Like they actually want you to have a good story. And I think more and more our athletes, we're taking more responsibility that there has to be a story afterwards. It can't end at rugby. You know what I'm saying? It's got to be, or at any sport. And I think as well, I think there's now funds starting up for sportsmen that they can invest in, and those funds are doing it properly and getting into businesses or buying shares, etc. Because not everybody has to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody has to do that. You know what I'm saying? Some people you can invest and get returns and do that well, and that's great. And then use your time to open your network and wait for the opportunity. Don't be in a rush. You got the rest of your life. So I think that's what I'd say there.
Thank you very much, Tim. Great question, Coach G. The one thing I would add is I'm busy listening to this amazing audiobook, which is called Who Not How. And I wish I learned about that earlier in life, because often I've tried to always figure things out on my own. And sometimes the answer to the problem is finding the right person to do it with rather than trying to solve it yourself. So, yeah, thank you very much, guys. That was an amazing conversation. Really had learned a lot, and just spending time with you and having these deep conversations. And thanks for being vulnerable, and thanks for embracing the conversation and leaning in. We really appreciate it. And winning the away game is really just about that, is how do we lean into the challenges that life throws at us so that we can win the away game and come out hopefully victorious on the other side.
Thanks for having us, guys. Really enjoyed it, and nice to meet you, Tim. Definitely to touch base with you. Unbelievable, man. And I really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Really, really look forward to this, and look forward to having you guys in Portugal as well. So definitely.
Yeah, we'll come visit in Portugal. Thanks, Gatti. Thanks, Tim.